The United States bicentennial half-dollar dated 1776 to 1976 with the D mint mark is one of the most historically significant modern U.S. coins, issued to commemorate the 200th anniversary of American independence. Unlike regular half-dollars that carry a single-year date, this special issue uniquely displays a dual date, 1776 to 1976, symbolizing the span from the Declaration of Independence in 1776 to the bicentennial celebrations in 1976. The coin belongs to the Kennedy half-dollar series, which was first introduced in 1964 to honor President John F. Kennedy following his assassination. For the bicentennial, the U.S. Mint temporarily replaced the standard reverse design and struck these coins at 3 mints: Philadelphia, no mint mark; Denver, D mint mark; and San Francisco, S mint mark. Your coin, bearing the D mint mark, was produced at the Denver Mint, which struck these coins in very large numbers to meet public demand during the national celebrations. On the obverse front of the coin, the familiar left-facing portrait of John F. Kennedy appears, originally designed by Gilroy Roberts. The inscriptions include Liberty, along the top edge, In God We Trust divided on either side of Kennedy's neck, and the distinctive dual date 1776 to 1976 at the bottom. This obverse design connects the bicentennial coin to the broader Kennedy half-dollar series, maintaining continuity while the date alone signals its special commemorative purpose. The reverse, back of the coin is what truly sets the bicentennial half-dollar apart. Designed by Seth G. Huntington, the reverse depicts Independence Hall in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, the historic building where both the Declaration of Independence and the U.S. Constitution were debated and adopted. Above Independence Hall is the inscription United States of America, while half-dollar appears below, and E Pluribus Unum is placed to the right of the building. This imagery strongly reinforces the coin's patriotic and historical theme. In terms of composition, the bicentennial half-dollar struck at the Denver Mint is made of copper-nickel clad, consisting of an outer layer of 75% copper and 25% nickel bonded to a pure copper core. This was the standard metallic composition for circulating half-dollars at the time, as silver had been removed from regular issue half-dollars after 1970. The coin has a diameter of 30.6 millimeters, a weight of 11.34 grams, and a reeded edge, all consistent with other Kennedy half-dollars. While special 40% silver bicentennial half-dollars were produced, those were struck only at the San Francisco Mint for collectors and do not apply to the Denver D Mint circulation strikes. The mintage of the 1776 to 1976 D bicentennial half-dollar is extremely high, with approximately 141 million coins struck at the Denver Mint. Because of this massive production, the coin is very common today, especially in circulated condition. During the bicentennial era, many Americans saved these coins as souvenirs, which means a large number also survive in uncirculated condition. As a result, the coin's monetary value is generally modest. In circulated condition, it is typically worth face value, 50 cents. In uncirculated condition, values may range from $1 to $3, depending on luster and strike quality. Exceptionally well-preserved examples graded by professional services, such as MS-65 or higher, can bring slightly higher prices, but they are still considered affordable collector coins rather than rare investments. From a historical and cultural perspective, the 1776 to 1976 bicentennial half-dollar holds great symbolic importance. It reflects a period in American history when the U.S. government actively used coinage to foster national pride and historical awareness. These coins were widely circulated during the mid-1970s, meaning they were handled by millions of Americans and became part of everyday life during a major national milestone. Although not rare, the coin remains highly popular among collectors, especially beginners, Kennedy half-dollar enthusiasts, and those interested in American commemorative issues. Its appeal lies less in precious metal content or rarity and more in its strong patriotic symbolism, distinctive design, and connection to the bicentennial celebrations, making the 1776 to 1976 D Mint mark half-dollar a lasting and meaningful piece of United States numismatic history. Next, top 2. The United States bicentennial $1 coin, dated 1776 to 1976 with no mint mark, is a historically important and widely collected American coin issued to commemorate the 200th anniversary of the independence of the United States. This coin belongs to the Eisenhower dollar series, which was introduced in 1971 to honor Dwight D. Eisenhower, the 34th President of the United States and Supreme Commander of the Allied forces in Europe during World War II. For the bicentennial celebration, the U.S. Mint made a special decision to redesign the reverse of the dollar coin and to use a dual date, 1776 to 1976, instead of a single year, making this issue instantly recognizable and unique within U.S. coinage history. The no mint mark example was struck at the Philadelphia Mint, which traditionally did not place a mint mark on coins during this period. The obverse front of the bicentennial Eisenhower dollar features a bold left-facing portrait of President Dwight D. Eisenhower, designed by chief engraver Frank Gasparo. The inscriptions include Liberty along the upper rim, In God We Trust placed to the left of Eisenhower's neck, and the dual date 1776 to 1976 along the bottom edge. Eisenhower's image symbolizes leadership, strength, and unity, values that aligned well with the bicentennial theme of national pride and reflection. This same obverse design was used on all Eisenhower dollars from 1971 through 1978, but the dual date distinguishes the bicentennial issue from regular strikes. The reverse back of the coin is what truly defines its commemorative character. Instead of the standard Apollo 11 eagle landing design used on regular Eisenhower dollars, the bicentennial reverse, also designed by Frank Gasparo, depicts the Liberty Bell superimposed over the moon. This powerful image combines two major American achievements: the Liberty Bell representing the nation's founding ideals of freedom and independence, and the moon symbolizing America's technological triumph with the Apollo space program. Surrounding the design are the inscriptions United States of America at the top and $1 at the bottom, with E pluribus unum placed to the right of the Liberty Bell. This reverse design is one of the most iconic commemorative coin designs in U.S. history. In terms of composition, the 1776 to 1976 Eisenhower dollar with no mint mark struck at Philadelphia is made of copper-nickel clad, consisting of an outer layer of 75% copper and 25% nickel bonded to a pure copper core. The coin has a diameter of 38.1 millimeters, a weight of 22.68 grams, and a reeded edge, making it one of the largest modern U.S. circulating coins. It is important to note that while 40% silver bicentennial Eisenhower dollars were produced, those were struck only at the San Francisco Mint, S mint mark, for collectors. The Philadelphia no mint mark version was intended strictly for general circulation. The mintage of the bicentennial Eisenhower dollar from the Philadelphia Mint is very high, with approximately 113 million coins produced. Because of this large production and the fact that many people saved these coins as souvenirs during the bicentennial celebrations, the coin is very common today. As a result, its market value is generally modest. In circulated condition, it is typically worth face value, $1. In uncirculated condition, values usually range from $1.50 to $3, depending on overall condition, luster, and strike quality. Coins that have been professionally graded in high mint state grades may sell for somewhat higher prices, but they are still considered affordable collector coins rather than rare or high-value investments. From a historical and cultural standpoint, the 1776 to 1976 no mint mark Eisenhower dollar holds significant importance despite its low monetary value. It represents a unique moment when the United States celebrated its bicentennial through everyday objects used by millions of people. These coins circulated widely, were saved in drawers and albums, and became keepsakes marking a once-in-a-lifetime national event. Today, the bicentennial Eisenhower dollar is especially popular among beginner collectors, Eisenhower dollar specialists, and history enthusiasts, valued for its bold design, large size, and strong patriotic symbolism. While it may not be rare, the 1776 to 1976 $1 coin with no mint mark remains a meaningful and enduring reminder of America's 200 years of independence and its continued journey as a nation. The United States of America 1-cent coin dated 1944 with no mint mark, commonly known as the 1944 Lincoln Wheat Penny, is one of the most historically significant and widely collected American coins of the 20th century, representing a critical moment in U.S. monetary, industrial, and wartime history during World War II. This coin was struck at the Philadelphia Mint, which traditionally used no mint mark, and it features the iconic Lincoln portrait designed by Victor David Brenner, first. Introduced in 1909 to commemorate the 100th anniversary of Abraham Lincoln's birth, making it the first regular issue U.S. coin to feature a real historical person rather than a symbolic figure. On the obverse, the coin bears the inscriptions "In God We Trust" at the top, Liberty to the left of Lincoln's profile, and the date 1944 to the right, while the reverse displays two stylized wheat ears framing the words 1 cent and United States of America, with the Latin motto E pluribus unum above, symbolizing unity and agricultural prosperity. The year 1944 is especially important because it marked the return of copper alloy planchets after the unusual 1943 steel cent, which had been produced due to wartime copper shortages, and most 1944 wheat pennies were struck using recycled copper from shell casings and military equipment, giving the coin deep patriotic significance as a direct material link between the home front and the battlefield. The standard composition of the 1944 wheat penny is approximately 95% copper and 5% zinc, with a weight of 3.11 grams, a diameter of 19.05 millimeters, and a smooth, plain edge, and when freshly struck these coins exhibited a bright reddish color that gradually toned to brown over decades of circulation, the Philadelphia Mint produced over 1.4 billion 1944 wheat pennies, making it one of the highest mintage Lincoln cents ever, which explains why the coin is still relatively common today in circulated grades, though high quality uncirculated examples with full original red luster are significantly scarcer and more valuable. Collectors carefully evaluate the coin's condition using the Sheldon grading scale, with factors such as strike sharpness, surface preservation, luster, and the clarity of Lincoln's hair and coat lines playing a major role in determining value. Most circulated 1944 no-mint wheat pennies are worth modest amounts, but examples graded mint state, MS-63 to MS-67, can command much higher premiums, especially those classified as red RD rather than red-brown RB or brown BN. Additionally, the 1944 wheat penny series includes several famous and rare era varieties, such as the 1944 steel cent, which was accidentally struck on leftover steel planchets from 1943 and is considered one of the most valuable modern U.S. coin errors, often selling for tens or even hundreds of thousands of dollars, making collectors eager to test 1944 pennies with magnets to rule out this extraordinary anomaly. Other collectible varieties include repunched mint marks on Denver and San Francisco issues, die cracks, double dies, and off-metal strikes, though the standard Philadelphia no-mint version remains the backbone of the year's production. Historically, the 1944 wheat penny circulated heavily during the post-war years, often appearing in everyday commerce well into the 1960s and early 1970s, and for many Americans it became a quiet reminder of wartime sacrifice and economic recovery. Today, the coin holds enduring appeal among beginners and advanced collectors alike, serving as a gateway into Lincoln cent collecting while also offering deeper layers of historical meaning tied to U.S. industrial mobilization, wartime recycling, and mid-century American life. Beyond its monetary value, the 1944 no-mint mark wheat penny stands as a tangible artifact of resilience, symbolizing how even the smallest denomination of U.S. currency played a role in supporting a nation at war and preserving the legacy of Abraham Lincoln as a symbol of unity, freedom, and perseverance in one of the most challenging periods of modern history. Next, top 2. The United States of America 1 cent dated 1946 with no mint mark, widely known as the 1946 Lincoln wheat penny, is a coin of notable historical, cultural, and numismatic importance because it represents the first full peacetime year of American coinage following the end of World War II, symbolizing the nation's transition from wartime sacrifice to post-war recovery and renewed economic growth. This coin was struck at the Philadelphia Mint, which traditionally placed no mint mark on its coins, and it continues the long-running Lincoln wheat cent design created by sculptor Victor David Brenner, first issued in 1909 to honor the 100th anniversary of President Abraham Lincoln's birth and to reflect democratic ideals through the image of a real historical leader rather than an allegorical figure. The obverse of the 1946 wheat penny displays Lincoln's dignified right-facing profile with the inscriptions "In God We Trust" arching along the top rim, "Liberty" to the left, and the date 1946 to the right, while the reverse features two symmetrical wheat ears framing the words 1 cent and United States of America, with E pluribus unum above, a design that symbolized agricultural strength and national unity during the first half of the 20th century. The composition of the 1946 no-mint wheat penny is 95% copper and 5% zinc, weighing 3.11 grams, measuring 19.05 millimeters in diameter, and featuring a plain edge, and unlike wartime issues that relied on recycled military brass, the 1946 cents were struck using standard post-war copper supplies, giving them a more consistent metallic appearance and rich coloration when uncirculated. Production of the 1946 Philadelphia wheat penny exceeded 991 million coins, reflecting both the reopening of civilian markets after the war and the heavy demand for small-denomination currency during a time of economic expansion, suburban development, and increased consumer activity. In circulation, these pennies passed through countless hands during the late 1940s and 1950s, witnessing the rise of post-war America, the growth of industry, and the everyday transactions of a population eager to return to normal life. From a collector's perspective, the 1946 no-mint mark wheat penny is considered common in circulated grades, yet it remains highly collectible due to its historical placement at the beginning of the modern post-war era, and its value is strongly influenced by condition, surface quality, strike sharpness, and remaining original mint luster, with uncirculated examples graded mint state, MS-63 to MS-67, commanding significantly higher premiums, especially those retaining full red RD color as opposed to red-brown RB or brown BN classifications. The coin is also studied for minor varieties and minting anomalies such as die cracks, clipped planchets, off-center strikes, and occasional double die effects, though no major double die variety is as famous as those seen in earlier Lincoln cents. Numismatically, the 1946 wheat penny holds special appeal because it falls within the final decade of the wheat cent series, which would end in 1958 and be replaced by the Lincoln Memorial reverse in 1959, making it part of the closing chapter of a classic American coin design, culturally and historically. The 1946 no-mint wheat penny stands as a quiet witness to a nation redefining itself after global conflict, representing thrift, stability, and the daily commerce of post-war American life. And although its face value is small, its symbolic value is substantial, as it embodies continuity, recovery, and the enduring presence of Abraham Lincoln on U.S. coinage, making the 1946 Philadelphia Lincoln wheat penny not just a collectible coin, but a tangible artifact of American resilience, optimism, and historical continuity in the next top 3. The United States of America 1 cent dated 1961 D mint mark, commonly called the 1961 D mint mark Lincoln 1 penny, is an important example of American coinage that reflects the economic growth, social change, and everyday life of the United States during the early 1960s, a period marked by post-war prosperity, the Cold War, and the beginning of major cultural transformations. This coin was struck at the Denver Mint, indicated by the small D mint mark located below the date on the obverse. And it belongs to the long-running Lincoln Cent series, which began in 1909 and honored President Abraham Lincoln, making it one of the most enduring designs in U.S. numismatic history. The obverse of the 1961 D penny features Lincoln's right-facing portrait designed by Victor David Brenner, with the inscriptions "In God We Trust" along the top rim, "Liberty" to the left, and the date 1961, with the D mint mark to the right, while the reverse displays the Lincoln Memorial design, introduced in 1959 to commemorate the 150th anniversary of Lincoln's birth, showing the famous Washington, D.C. monument with a seated statue of Lincoln visible between the central columns, along with the inscriptions United States of America, 1 cent, and E pluribus unum, symbolizing national unity. Compositionally, the 1961 D Lincoln cent is made of 95% copper and 5% zinc, weighing 3.11 grams, with a diameter of 19.05 millimeters and a plain edge, representing the traditional copper alloy used. 4 U.S. pennies before major metal changes later in the 20th century. The Denver Mint produced approximately 1.75 billion 1961 D pennies, an exceptionally high mintage that reflects the massive demand for small change during a time of expanding population, booming consumer activity, and widespread use of cash in daily transactions such as newspapers, public transport, candy, and household goods. Because of this enormous production, the 1961 D penny is considered very common in circulated condition, and millions remain in circulation, piggy banks, and collections today, yet it still holds numismatic interest as a representative coin of its era. Collectors evaluate the coin using the Sheldon grading scale, focusing on details such as the sharpness of Lincoln's hair and jawline, the clarity of the memorial steps, surface preservation, and the presence of original mint luster. With uncirculated examples graded mint state, MS-63 to MS-67, being far scarcer than worn pieces and commanding higher premiums, especially those retaining full red RD color rather than toning to red-brown RB or brown BN over time. While the 1961 D penny is not known for major famous double-die varieties like some earlier Lincoln cents, collectors still search for minor errors and varieties such as die cracks, off-center strikes, clipped planchets, weak strikes, and repunched mint marks, which add interest and potential value. Historically, this coin circulated during the presidency of John F. Kennedy, the rise of the space race, and a period of optimism mixed with global tension, making it a small but tangible witness to a significant chapter of American history. Although its face value is minimal and its market value modest in most conditions, the 1961 D Lincoln 1 cent remains an essential piece for date and mint collectors, beginner numismatists, and historians alike, representing the stability of U.S. currency, the continuity of Lincoln's legacy on American coinage, and the everyday economic life of early 1960s America, proving that even the smallest denomination can carry lasting historical, cultural, and collectible significance. Next top 4. The United States of America 1 cent dated 1962 D mint mark, commonly referred to as the 1962 Lincoln 1 penny, is a classic example of early 1960s American coinage and reflects a period of economic stability, expanding consumer culture, and growing confidence in the United States during the Cold War era. This coin was struck at the Denver Mint, as indicated by the small D mint mark located just below the date on the obverse, and it belongs to the long-running Lincoln Cent series, which began in 1909 and honors President Abraham Lincoln, whose portrait, designed by sculptor Victor David Brenner, has remained one of the most enduring and recognizable images in U.S. numismatic history. The obverse of the 1962 D penny features Lincoln's right-facing bust with the inscriptions "In God We Trust" along the top rim, "Liberty" to the left, and the date 1962, with the Denver Mint mark to the right, while the reverse displays the Lincoln Memorial design, introduced in 1959 to mark the 150th anniversary of Lincoln's birth, depicting the iconic Washington, D.C. monument with a seated statue of Lincoln visible between the central columns, accompanied by the inscriptions "United States of America" at the top, 1 cent at the bottom, and "E pluribus unum" above the memorial, symbolizing unity among the states. In terms of composition, the 1962 D. Lincoln cent is made of the traditional 95% copper and 5% zinc alloy, weighs 3.11 grams, measures 19.05 millimeters in diameter, and has a plain edge, representing the classic copper penny formulation used for U.S. cents prior to the metal changes that would occur in later decades. The Denver Mint produced approximately 3.3 billion 1962 D pennies, making it one of the highest minted U.S. coins of its era, a reflection of the enormous demand for small denomination coinage during a time when cash transactions dominated daily life. Vending machines were becoming more common, and the American population was rapidly growing. Because of this massive production, the 1962 D penny is considered extremely common in circulated condition, and examples are still frequently encountered today, yet it remains an important coin for collectors building complete date and mint sets of Lincoln cents. From a numismatic standpoint, collectors assess the coin using the Sheldon grading scale, paying close attention to the sharpness of Lincoln's facial features, the strength of the memorial's columns and steps, surface quality, and the presence of original mint luster, with uncirculated specimens graded mint state, MS63 to MS67, being far more desirable and valuable than worn examples, especially those retaining full red RD coloration as opposed to red-brown RB or brown BN tones caused by long-term oxidation. While no major double-die varieties are widely recognized for the 1962 D issue, collectors often search for minor mint errors such as die cracks, off-center strikes, clipped planchets, weak strikes, and repunched mint marks, which add interest and potential premium value. Historically, the 1962 D Lincoln cent circulated during the presidency of John F. Kennedy, amid events such as the Cuban Missile Crisis, the intensification of the space race, and significant social change, making it a small yet tangible artifact of a pivotal moment in American history. Although its monetary value is usually modest due to its abundance, the 1962 D Lincoln 1 cent holds lasting appeal as a symbol of everyday American commerce, the durability of classic coin design, and the enduring legacy of Abraham Lincoln on U.S. currency, demonstrating how even a simple 1-cent coin can carry deep historical, cultural, and collectible significance. Next, top 5. The United States of America 1 cent dated 1964 no mint mark, commonly known as the 1964 Lincoln 1 penny, is a highly recognizable and historically meaningful coin that represents a pivotal moment in modern American monetary history, everyday commerce, and social change during the mid-1960s, a time when the United States was experiencing rapid population growth, economic expansion, and cultural transformation. This coin was struck at the Philadelphia Mint, which traditionally used no mint mark, and it belongs to the long-running Lincoln cent series, first introduced in 1909 to honor President Abraham Lincoln, whose portrait, designed by Victor David Brenner, had by 1964 become one of the most familiar images in American daily life. The obverse of the 1964 penny features Lincoln's right-facing bust with the inscriptions "In God We Trust" along the top edge, Liberty to the left, and the date 1964 to the right, while the reverse displays the Lincoln Memorial design, introduced in 1959 to commemorate the 150th anniversary of Lincoln's birth, showing the famous Washington, D.C. monument with a seated statue of Lincoln visible between the central columns, accompanied by United States of America, 1 cent, and E Pluribus Unum, symbolizing unity and national identity. Compositionally, the 1964 no mint Lincoln cent is made of the traditional 95% copper and 5% zinc alloy, weighs 3.11 grams, measures 19.05 millimeters in diameter, and has a plain edge representing the classic copper penny formulation used before the metal changes of the late 20th century. The year 1964 is especially significant in U.S. coinage history because it occurred during a nationwide coin shortage, driven by rising silver prices, hoarding of silver coins, and increased demand for circulating currency, which led the U.S. Mint to dramatically increase production of cents and other denominations, resulting in an enormous mintage of over 2.6 billion 1964 pennies from Philadelphia alone, making it one of the most heavily produced coins in American history. These pennies circulated extensively throughout the 1960s and 1970s, passing through millions of everyday transactions involving newspapers, public transportation, school lunches, candy, and household goods, and for many Americans they became a symbol of daily life during the era of the Civil Rights Movement, the early years of the Vietnam War, and the presidency of Lyndon B. Johnson following the assassination of President John F. Kennedy in late 1963. From a numismatic perspective, the 1964 no mint mark penny is considered extremely common in circulated condition, and its value in worn grades is usually close to face value, yet it remains an essential coin for collectors assembling complete Lincoln cent date sets or studying high mintage issues of the 20th century. Collectors evaluate examples using the Sheldon grading scale, focusing on the sharpness of Lincoln's hair and facial features, the clarity of the memorial's columns and steps, surface preservation, and the presence of original mint luster, with uncirculated pieces graded mint state, MS63 to MS67, being significantly scarcer and more desirable, particularly those retaining full red RD color rather than toning to red-brown RB or brown BN over time due to copper oxidation. Although the 1964 Nomint penny is not famous for major double-die varieties, collectors still search for minor mint errors such as die cracks, grease filled dies, off-center strikes, clipped planchets, and weak strikes, which add educational and collectible interest. Historically and culturally, the 1964 Lincoln 1 cent with no mint mark stands as a small but powerful artifact of a nation in transition, reflecting mass production, widespread circulation, and the growing role of the U.S. Mint in supporting an expanding economy. And while its monetary value may be modest, its historical significance is substantial, as it embodies the continuity of American coinage, the enduring legacy of Abraham Lincoln, and the everyday experiences of millions of people during one of the most transformative decades in United States history. Next top 6. The United States of America 1 cent dated 1965 no mint mark, commonly known as the 1965 Lincoln 1 penny, is a historically significant coin that reflects a unique and transitional moment in U.S. coinage history, closely tied to economic pressures, social change, and minting policy during the mid-1960s. Although the coin bears no mint mark, this does not mean it was struck only at one facility, because during 1965, 1966, and 1967 the U.S. Mint intentionally removed mint marks from all circulating coins in response to a severe national coin shortage, hoping to discourage hoarding and speculation, and as a result, 1965 Lincoln cents were struck primarily at the Philadelphia and Denver mints, but all were released without identifying mint marks. The obverse of the 1965 penny features the familiar right-facing portrait of President Abraham Lincoln, designed by Victor David Brenner, along with the inscriptions "In God We Trust" along the top rim, "Liberty" to the left, and the date 1965 to the right, while the reverse displays the Lincoln Memorial design, introduced in 1959, showing the iconic Washington, D.C. monument with a seated statue of Lincoln visible between the central columns, accompanied by United States of America, 1 cent, and E Pluribus Unum, symbolizing national unity and democratic ideals. In terms of composition, the 1965 Lincoln cent is made of the traditional 95% copper and 5% zinc alloy, weighs 3.11 grams, measures 19.05 millimeters in diameter, and has a plain edge, representing the classic copper penny used in U.S. circulation until metal composition changes began later in the 20th century. The year 1965 is especially important because it marked the passage of the Coinage Act of 1965, which removed silver from dimes and quarters and reduced silver content in half dollars, making the humble copper cent one of the last U.S. coins to retain its traditional metal content unchanged during this period of monetary reform. Production of the 1965 Lincoln cent exceeded over 1 billion coins, reflecting massive mint output driven by public demand for small change during a time when vending machines, public transportation, and cash-based retail transactions were central to everyday American life. These pennies circulated widely throughout the late 1960s, 1970s, and beyond, witnessing the civil rights movement, the escalation of the Vietnam War, the Cultural Revolution of the 1960s, and rapid technological and social change. From a numismatic standpoint, the 1965 Nomint Lincoln penny is considered very common in circulated condition, and most worn examples are worth only face value, yet it remains an essential coin for collectors completing Lincoln cent sets or studying the unusual Nomint mark years. Collectors evaluate examples using the Sheldon grading scale, focusing on details such as the sharpness of Lincoln's portrait, the strength of the memorial columns, surface quality, and remaining mint luster. With uncirculated coins graded mint state, MS63 to MS67, being more desirable, particularly those retaining full red RD coloration rather than toning to red-brown RB or brown BN due to copper oxidation. In addition to regular circulation strikes, 1965 cents were also included in special mint sets, SMS, which feature sharper strikes and satin-like finishes and are collected separately from standard business strikes. While no major double-die varieties are widely known for this issue, collectors often seek minor mint errors such as die cracks, grease-filled dies, off-center strikes, clipped planchets, and weak strikes. Historically and culturally, the 1965 Lincoln 1 cent with no mint mark stands as a symbol of a nation adapting to economic challenges and modernizing its coinage system, and although its monetary value is modest, its historical importance is considerable, representing continuity amid change, the enduring presence of Abraham Lincoln on U.S. currency, and the everyday transactions of millions of Americans during one of the most transformative decades in United States history. Next top 7. The United States of America 1 cent dated 1968 D mint mark, commonly known as the 1968 Lincoln 1 penny, is a notable coin in modern U.S. numismatics because it marks the return of mint marks to American circulating coinage after their temporary removal from 1965 through 1967, a policy that had been implemented to combat coin hoarding during a national shortage. making the presence of the D mint mark on this coin historically meaningful as well as easily identifiable. This penny was struck at the Denver Mint, and it belongs to the long-running Lincoln cent series, which began in 1909 and features the portrait of President Abraham Lincoln designed by sculptor Victor David Brenner, an image that by the late 1960s had become deeply ingrained in American daily life and cultural identity. The obverse of the 1968 D cent displays Lincoln's right-facing bust with the inscriptions, "In God We Trust," along the upper rim, "Liberty" to the left, and the date 1968 with the Denver Mint mark just below it, while the reverse shows the Lincoln Memorial design, introduced in 1959, depicting the famous Washington, D.C. monument with a seated statue of Lincoln visible between the central columns, accompanied by the inscriptions United States of America, 1 cent, and E pluribus unum, which together express national unity and democratic ideals. In terms of composition, the 1968 D Lincoln cent is made of the traditional 95% copper and 5% zinc alloy, weighs 3.11 grams, measures 19.05 millimeters in diameter, and has a plain edge, continuing the classic copper penny formula that had been used for decades before later changes to copper-plated zinc. The Denver Mint produced approximately 2.89 billion 1968 D pennies, an exceptionally high mintage reflecting strong demand for small denomination coins during a period of rising population, expanding consumer markets, and heavy reliance on cash transactions. These pennies circulated widely throughout the late 1960s and 1970s, passing through countless everyday purchases and witnessing a turbulent period in American history marked by the Vietnam War, the Civil Rights Movement, widespread social change, and the presidency of Lyndon B. Johnson followed by Richard Nixon. From a numismatic perspective, the 1968 D penny is considered very common in circulated condition, and most worn examples are worth little more than face value, yet it remains an essential date for collectors building complete Lincoln cent sets, particularly because it represents the first year since 1964 that Denver minted cents once again carried a mint mark. Collectors evaluate the coin using the Sheldon grading scale, focusing on factors such as the sharpness of Lincoln's hair and facial features, the clarity of the memorial's columns and steps, surface preservation, and the presence of original mint luster, with uncirculated examples graded mint state, MS63 to MS67, being significantly more desirable, especially those retaining full red RD coloration rather than red-brown RB or brown BN toning caused by copper oxidation. In addition to regular circulation strikes, 1968 cents were also produced in proof format at the San Francisco Mint, bearing an S mint mark, making the Denver issue strictly a business strike coin. While no major double-die varieties are famous for the 1968 D cent, collectors often search for minor mint errors such as die cracks, off-center strikes, clipped planchets, weak strikes, and repunched mint marks, which add educational and collectible interest. Historically and culturally, the 1968 D Lincoln 1 cent stands as a small yet meaningful artifact of a transformative era in U.S. history, symbolizing the return to normal minting practices after the coin shortage years, the continuity of traditional copper coinage, and the enduring presence of Abraham Lincoln on American currency, making it an important and representative piece of everyday American life. In the next top 8. The United States of America 1 cent dated 1978 D mint mark, commonly known as the 1978 D mint mark Lincoln 1 penny, is a significant example of American coinage that reflects economic change, evolving minting technology, and everyday life in the United States during the late 1970s, a decade characterized by inflation, energy concerns, and shifts in the nation's industrial and monetary systems. This penny was struck at the Denver Mint, as indicated by the small D mint mark located just below the date on the obverse, and it belongs to the long-running Lincoln cent series, which began in 1909 and continues to honor President Abraham Lincoln, with a familiar right-facing portrait designed by Victor David Brenner, an image that by 1978 had appeared on U.S. coins for nearly 70 years and had become one of the most enduring symbols in American numismatics. The obverse of the 1978 D cent features the inscriptions "In God We Trust," along the upper rim, "Liberty" to the left of Lincoln's portrait, and the date 1978 with the Denver Mint mark to the right, while the reverse displays the Lincoln Memorial design, introduced in 1959, depicting the iconic Washington, D.C. monument with a seated statue of Lincoln visible between the central columns, accompanied by the inscriptions United States of America, 1 cent, and E pluribus unum, which together emphasize national unity and democratic values. A key numismatic characteristic of the 1978 D penny is its metal composition, as it is made of 95% copper and 5% zinc, weighs 3.11 grams, measures 19.05 millimeters in diameter, and has a plain edge, placing it among the last generation of traditional solid copper U.S. cents, since the U.S. Mint would change the cent's composition to copper-plated zinc in 1982 due to rising copper prices. The Denver Mint produced approximately 3.2 billion 1978 D pennies, an extremely high mintage that reflects the continued heavy demand for small denomination coinage during a period when cash transactions were still dominant in daily commerce, including vending machines, public transportation, newspapers, and retail purchases. These pennies circulated extensively throughout the late 1970s, 1980s, and beyond, passing through countless everyday transactions during the era of President Jimmy Carter, rising inflation, and economic adjustment, making them familiar objects in American pockets, jars, and cash registers. From a collector's standpoint, the 1978 D. Lincoln cent is considered very common in circulated condition, and most worn examples are worth little more than face value, yet it remains an essential coin for collectors assembling complete date and mint Lincoln cent sets, particularly because of its status as a pre-1982 copper issue. Collectors evaluate the coin using the Sheldon grading scale, focusing on factors such as the sharpness of Lincoln's hair and facial features, the clarity of the memorial's columns and steps, surface preservation, and the presence of original mint luster, with uncirculated specimens graded mint state, MS63 to MS67, being more desirable and carrying higher premiums, especially those retaining full red RD color rather than toning to red-brown RB or brown BN, over time due to copper oxidation. While no major famous double-die varieties are widely associated with the 1978 D penny, collectors often look for minor mint errors such as die cracks, off-center strikes, clipped planchets, weak strikes, and repunched mint marks, which add interest and potential value. Historically and culturally, the 1978 D Lincoln 1 cent represents the closing years of traditional copper cent production and serves as a tangible reminder of everyday American life during a challenging yet transformative period in the nation's economic history. And although its monetary value is generally modest, its numismatic and historical significance lies in its role as a widely circulated, widely recognized symbol of continuity, practicality, and the enduring legacy of Abraham Lincoln on United States coinage. The coin shown in the images is a United States of America buffalo nickel dated 1930, a 5-cent coin that belongs to one of the most iconic and artistically celebrated series in U.S. numismatic history, officially known as the Indian head nickel, which was minted from 1913 to 1938 and represents a bold departure from earlier classical coin designs, as its obverse features a powerful right-facing portrait of a Native American, symbolizing the indigenous peoples of the United States rather than a specific individual, with the word liberty inscribed along the rim and the date 1930 clearly visible, while the reverse depicts a massive American bison, commonly called a buffalo, standing on a raised mound, a symbol of strength, endurance, and the American frontier, accompanied by the inscriptions United States of America and 5 cents, affirming its denomination. This design was created by renowned sculptor James Earl Fraser, a student of Augusta St. Gaudens, who sought to capture a distinctly American identity by honoring Native American heritage and the wildlife of the Great Plains at a time when both were rapidly disappearing, making this coin deeply symbolic of early 20th century American cultural awareness. The 1930 buffalo nickel was struck during the early years of the Great Depression, a period of severe economic hardship in the United States, and coins from this era circulated heavily, which explains the significant where visible on your example, including the smoothing of facial features, partial loss of the buffalo's horn and fur detail, and softened lettering, all of which are common on circulated buffalo nickels. Compositionally, the coin is made of 75% copper and 25% nickel, weighs 5 grams, measures 21.2 millimeters in diameter, and has a plain edge, specifications that remained consistent throughout the series. Buffalo nickels were struck at Philadelphia, no mint mark, Denver D, and San Francisco S, and while the mint mark area is not clearly visible in your images, the absence of a visible mark would indicate a Philadelphia issue, which was the most common mint for this date. In terms of value, heavily circulated 1930 buffalo nickels typically hold modest collector value above face value due to their age and historical importance, while higher-grade examples with stronger detail, especially a visible date and clearer buffalo features, can be worth significantly more, and rare mint varieties or error strikes from this series are highly sought after by collectors worldwide. Historically, the buffalo nickel series is beloved because it represents a turning point in U.S. coinage, when realism and national identity replaced the more classical European-style designs, and today it remains one of the most collected American coins, making your 1930 example an important tangible artifact of American history, reflecting both the artistry of its creator and the challenging economic era in which it circulated, and standing as a lasting symbol of liberty, national heritage, and the rugged spirit of the United States. Next, top 2. The coin visible in your images is a United States buffalo nickel dated 1936, officially denominated as 5 cents, and it belongs to one of the most famous and artistically important coin series ever produced by the United States Mint, known formally as the Indian Head Nickel series, which was struck from 1913 until 1938 and marked a dramatic shift toward bold, uniquely American imagery in U.S. coinage, as the obverse of the coin features a strong right-facing portrait of a Native American. Figure, created as a composite representation rather than a single individual, with distinct braided hair, feathers, and deeply sculpted facial structure, symbolizing the indigenous heritage of North America, and bearing the inscription Liberty along the rim with the date 1936 clearly visible near the edge. The reverse side displays a powerful American bison, commonly called a buffalo, standing firmly on the ground, representing the strength, endurance, and frontier spirit of the United States. Accompanied by the inscriptions United States of America and 5 cents, which identify the issuing authority and denomination, and this design was created by renowned sculptor James Earl Fraser, a student of Augustus St. Gaudens, who intentionally chose subjects rooted in American history and landscape rather than classical European themes, making this coin deeply symbolic of national identity. The buffalo nickel is composed of 75% copper and 25% nickel, weighs 5 grams, measures 21.2 millimeters in diameter, and has a plain edge, specifications that remained constant throughout the series, and the 1936 issue was minted during the later years of the Great Depression, a period when coins circulated heavily due to economic hardship, which explains the extensive wear, smoothing, surface loss, and corrosion-like texture visible on your example, including the softened facial details on the obverse and the heavily worn body and head of the buffalo on the reverse. Buffalo nickels were produced at Philadelphia, no mint mark, Denver D, and San Francisco S, with a mint mark if present, located beneath the denomination on the reverse. And while the images suggest heavy wear that obscures fine details, the absence of a visible mint mark would indicate a Philadelphia issue, which was the most common for this date. From a numismatic standpoint, 1936 buffalo nickels are common in worn condition but remain highly collectible due to their age, historic design, and cultural significance, with value increasing substantially in higher grades where the date Liberty and buffalo horn are clearly visible, while special varieties from 1936, such as the famous 1936 double die obverse, are among the most valuable in the entire series, though such varieties require close examination under magnification, historically and culturally. The buffalo nickel stands as a lasting symbol of early 20th century America, capturing a moment when the nation consciously sought to honor Native American heritage and the disappearing wildlife of the Western Plains, and even in heavily circulated condition like the coin shown in your images, a 1936 buffalo nickel remains an important tangible artifact of U.S. history, reflecting the daily commerce, economic struggle, and artistic ambition of the United States during the Great Depression era, and embodying enduring themes of liberty, resilience, and national identity. Next, top 3. The United States of America $quarter dated 1984 D mint mark is a circulation coin from the long-established Washington Quarter series, a series that for generations formed an essential part of everyday American life and commerce, and this particular issue reflects the economic conditions, minting practices, and national symbolism of the United States during the mid-1980s. As the obverse of the coin features the familiar left-facing portrait of George Washington, the first president of the United States, designed by sculptor John Flanagan and first introduced in 1932 to commemorate the anniversary of Washington's birth, with the word liberty prominently inscribed along the upper rim as a powerful statement of the nation's founding principle of freedom, the national motto "I in God We Trust" placed to the left of Washington's profile, and the date 1984 positioned to the right, beneath which appears the D mint mark, identifying the coin as having been struck at the Denver Mint, a major U.S. minting facility that has produced vast quantities of circulating coinage since its establishment in 1906. The reverse of the 1984 D quarter continues the classic heraldic eagle design that had been standard on Washington quarters since 1932, depicting a bald eagle with wings outstretched, clutching a bundle of arrows symbolizing national strength and defense, while olive branches below the eagle represent peace, all surrounded by the inscriptions United States of America and $quarter, a design deeply familiar to Americans and used until 1998 before the introduction of the 50-state quarters program. In terms of composition, the coin is made of a copper-nickel-clad structure, consisting of outer layers of 75% copper and 25% nickel bonded to a pure copper core, with a standard weight of 5.67 grams, a diameter of 24.3 millimeters, and a reeded edge, specifications that had been in place since 1965 when silver was removed from circulating quarters due to rising bullion prices and widespread hoarding. The 1984 D quarter was struck in extremely large numbers, with a mintage of over 500 million coins, reflecting the heavy demand for quarters in the 1980s, when cash usage was high and quarters were indispensable for vending machines, laundromats, parking meters, toll roads, and public transportation systems, making this issue very common in circulated condition today. As a result of its high mintage, the 1984 D quarter generally holds face value unless found in uncirculated or high mint state condition, where strong original luster, clean surfaces, and sharp details, especially in Washington's hair and the eagle's feathers, can add collector value, with higher grade examples such as MS-66 and MS-67 being considerably scarcer and more desirable. Collectors also look for mint errors and varieties from this issue. including off-center strikes, clipped planchets, lamination errors, broad strikes, and double dies, which can be worth many times face value depending on their rarity and visual impact. Historically, the year 1984 sits within a period of economic recovery, technological growth, and cultural change in the United States, and coins from this era serve as everyday artifacts of American life before the rise of digital transactions, making the 1984 Washington quarter important not for rarity but for its role as a durable symbol of continuity, national identity, and the enduring American ideal of liberty expressed through United States coinage. Next, top 4. The United States of America quarter dollar dated 1992 with the P mint mark is a modern circulation issue from the long-running Washington quarter series, a series that for much of the 20th century represented stability, continuity, and everyday utility in American monetary life. And this particular coin reflects the final decade of the classic Washington quarter design before the introduction of the 50-state quarters program in 1999, as the obverse features the familiar left-facing portrait of George Washington, the first President of the United States, created by sculptor John Flanagan and first issued in 1932 to commemorate the bicentennial of Washington's birth, with the word liberty boldly inscribed along the upper rim as a powerful symbol of American freedom and democratic ideals. The national motto "I in God We Trust" placed to the left of Washington's profile, and the date 1992 to the right, beneath which appears the P mint mark indicating that the coin was struck at the Philadelphia Mint, the oldest United States mint facility, established in 1792 and a central institution in the nation's coinage history. The reverse of the 1992 P quarter continues the traditional heraldic design used on Washington quarters from 1932 until 1998, showing a bald eagle with wings outstretched, clutching a bundle of arrows symbolizing strength and national defense, while olive branches beneath the eagle represent peace, all encircled by the inscriptions United States of America and quarter dollar, a design deeply familiar to Americans before being replaced by the state quarter series. Compositionally, the 1992 P quarter is made of a copper-nickel clad structure, with outer layers of 75% copper and 25% nickel bonded to a pure copper core, weighing 5.67 grams, measuring 24.3 millimeters in diameter, and featuring a reeded edge, specifications standardized after the removal of silver from circulating quarters in 1965 due to rising bullion prices and widespread hoarding. The 1992 P quarter was produced in very large numbers, with a mintage exceeding 700 million coins, reflecting the continued heavy demand for quarters in the early 1990s when cash transactions were still dominant and quarters were essential for vending machines, parking meters, laundromats, toll booths, and public transportation systems, making this issue extremely common in circulated condition today. Because of its high mintage, the coin typically carries face value unless found in uncirculated or high mint state grades, where strong original luster, clean surfaces, and sharp strike details, particularly in Washington's hair and the eagle's feathers, can significantly increase collector value, with top condition examples such as MS-66 and MS-67 being relatively scarce compared to the vast number originally struck. Collectors also pay attention to mint errors and varieties, including off-center strikes, clipped planchets, broad strikes, and double dies, which can be worth substantially more depending on their rarity and visual appeal. Historically, the year 1992 marks a period of transition in American society and the global order, coming just after the end of the Cold War and during a time of economic and technological change, and coins from this year serve as tangible everyday artifacts of American life in the early 1990s, giving the 1992 P Washington quarter significance not for rarity but for its role as a durable symbol of national identity, continuity, and the enduring ideal of liberty expressed through United States coinage. The Canadian 1-cent coin dated 1947 with the Latin inscription Georgieve 6D GREX is one of the most historically significant and collectible circulation pennies of Canada because it sits at a moment of constitutional change, royal transition, and post-war economic adjustment, making it far more than a simple small copper coin, struck during the reign of King George VI, whose Latin title translates to George VI, by the grace of God, King. This cent reflects the final phase of the British Empire's traditional royal titulature before Canada formally updated its coin legends to remove reference to imperial authority, and although the coin bears the date 1947, the majority of pieces were actually minted in 1948, creating a unique situation in which the date does not match the year of production, a fact that fascinates collectors and adds to its importance. The reason for this anomaly lies in Canada's adoption of the Canadian Citizenship Act, which came into effect on January 1, 1947, legally redefining Canadians as citizens of Canada rather than British subjects, prompting the Royal Canadian Mint to redesign the obverse legend by removing the phrase ETIND, IMP Emperor of India, following India's independence, but because new master dies with the updated inscription were not ready immediately. The mint continued striking cents dated 1947 well into 1948 using the older obverse dies, and to differentiate these later strikes from earlier ones, a small maple leaf was discreetly placed after the date on some coins, resulting in two recognized varieties, the 1947 plain, no maple leaf, and the scarcer and more desirable 1947 maple leaf variety. The obverse of the coin features a dignified left-facing portrait of King George VI, designed by Thomas Humphrey Paget, showing the king without a crown in a realistic and restrained style typical of mid-20th century British Commonwealth coinage, surrounded by the Latin legend Georgiv 6d, G, Rex, while the reverse displays the iconic Canadian maple leaves on a twig, designed by George Edward Kruger Gray, a motif first introduced in 1937 and used for decades, symbolizing Canada's natural identity and unity. Compositionally, the 1947 cent is made of bronze, approximately 98% copper with tin and zinc, giving it a warm reddish-brown color when uncirculated. Though most surviving examples range from brown to dark chocolate tones due to oxidation and circulation wear, the coin measures 19.05 millimeters in diameter, weighs 3.24 grams, and has a plain edge aligning with standard Canadian cent specifications of the era. In terms of mintage, millions of 1947 dated cents were produced overall, but the maple leaf variety represents a much smaller subset, making it notably scarcer, especially in higher grades such as extremely fine EF, about uncirculated AU and mint state MS, where sharp details in the king's hair, crisp lettering, and strong leaf veins are essential for premium valuation. Historically, this coin circulated widely during a period of post-World War II recovery, when Canada was transitioning from wartime austerity to peacetime growth, and the humble cent played a vital role in daily commerce, purchasing basic goods and symbolizing stability in a changing world. Today, the 1947 Georgiev's cent is highly respected among numismatists not for precious metal value but for its constitutional, political, and historical significance, serving as a tangible reminder of Canada's evolution from a dominion closely tied to the British Empire toward a more autonomous national identity. Collectors often seek both varieties to complete George VI cent sets, and while common circulated examples are affordable, well-preserved pieces, particularly the maple leaf issue, can command significantly higher prices, especially if free from corrosion, heavy scratches, or cleaning, as original surfaces are strongly preferred. Beyond market value, the coin's enduring appeal lies in its story, a small bronze cent that quietly marks the end of imperial language on Canadian coinage, the assertion of Canadian citizenship, and the final years of a wartime king whose reign bridged tradition and modernity, making the 1947 Canadian 1 cent Georgiv 6 not merely a coin, but a compact historical document struck in metal. Next, top 2. The Canadian 1 cent coin dated 1981 featuring Queen Elizabeth II represents the final phase of Canada's long-running small cent tradition before major changes in minting technology, metal composition, and eventually the discontinuation of the denomination itself. And although at first glance it appears to be a very common modern penny, it carries historical, economic, and numismatic importance because it reflects Canada at the beginning of the 1980s, a period marked by inflation, technological transition at the Royal Canadian Mint, and the maturation of Queen Elizabeth II's reign. The obverse of the coin displays a right-facing portrait of Queen Elizabeth II designed by Arnold McKim, a refined and youthful effigy introduced in 1965 and used on Canadian cents through 1989, showing the Queen wearing a laurel wreath symbolizing dignity, continuity, and classical authority, with the Latin inscription Elizabeth II DG Regina, encircling the portrait, translating to Elizabeth II. By the grace of God, Queen, a traditional royal title that emphasizes constitutional monarchy rather than imperial power, reflecting Canada's fully sovereign status by this time. The reverse continues the iconic maple leaves on a twig design by George Edward Kruger Gray, a national symbol deeply associated with Canada's identity, resilience, and natural heritage, with the denomination 1 cent, and the date 1981 clearly displayed, making the coin immediately recognizable to generations of Canadians who used it in everyday transactions. Compositionally, the 1981 cent is made primarily of copper, approximately 98% copper, with small amounts of tin and zinc, one of the last years before later cents adopted copper-plated zinc and steel cores, giving the coin a traditional reddish-brown color when new and a darker brown patina after circulation. It measures 19.05 millimeters in diameter, weighs 3.24 grams, and has a plain edge, consistent with standard specifications that had remained largely unchanged since the mid-20th century. The Royal Canadian Mint produced tens of millions of these cents in 1981, as inflation and high production volumes required vast quantities of small change for vending machines, transit systems, and retail pricing, making the coin extremely common in circulated condition and still widely found in old jars, rolls, and collections. Historically, this coin circulated during a time when the purchasing power of 1 cent was already declining, yet it remained essential for precise pricing and tax calculations, symbolizing both the persistence and the approaching obsolescence of the smallest unit of Canadian currency. From a numismatic perspective, the 1981 cent is generally considered common, with modest value in circulated grades, but it becomes more interesting in high-grade uncirculated MS condition, especially examples with full red color, RD, strong strike, and minimal spotting, which are increasingly difficult to find due to oxidation and handling over time. While there are no major die varieties as famous as earlier maple leaf or dot issues, collectors still examine 1981 cents for minor errors such as die cracks, off-center strikes, or planchet flaws, which can add niche interest and value. Culturally, the coin reflects Queen Elizabeth II's long and stable presence on Canadian coinage, reinforcing continuity across decades while Canada itself evolved socially, politically, and economically. Today, the 1981 Canadian 1 cent is appreciated not for rarity or intrinsic metal worth, but as a representative artifact of everyday Canadian life, in the late a reminder of a denomination that once played a crucial role in commerce but has since been discontinued, making even this common penny a small historical witness to changing monetary practices, national identity, and the enduring symbolism of the maple leaf under the reign. Next, top 3. The Canadian 1 cent coin dated 1984 featuring Queen Elizabeth II belongs to the late modern era of Canada's penny series and represents a time when the 1 cent denomination was still an essential part of daily transactions, even though its purchasing power had already declined significantly, and as with other cents of the early 1980s, this coin reflects economic pressures, evolving minting practices, and the long continuity of Queen Elizabeth II's image on Canadian currency. The obverse shows a right-facing portrait of Queen Elizabeth II designed by Arnold Machin, first introduced on Canadian coins in 1965 and used for many years, depicting the Queen with a calm, idealized expression and wearing a laurel wreath that echoes classical imagery and symbolizes stability, authority, and continuity, while the surrounding Latin inscription Elizabeth II DG Regina translates to Elizabeth II, by the grace of God, Queen, emphasizing Canada's constitutional monarchy and its mature national sovereignty rather than any imperial claim. The reverse carries the familiar maple leaves on a twig motif designed by George Edward Kruger Gray, a design that had become one of the most enduring symbols in Canadian numismatics, representing the nation's natural heritage, unity, and resilience, accompanied by the denomination 1 cent and the date 1984, making the coin instantly recognizable to Canadians who used it in everyday commerce. The 1984 cent is composed of bronze, approximately 98% copper with small amounts of tin and zinc, giving it a rich reddish color when newly struck that typically darkens to brown over time due to oxidation, and it maintains standard cent specifications of 19.05 mm diameter, 3.24 grams weight, and a plain edge, reflecting remarkable continuity in size and composition that had lasted for decades. The Royal Canadian Mint struck a very large mintage in 1984, numbering in the tens of millions, to meet circulation demands during a period of inflation, heavy cash usage, and price structures that still relied on 1 cent increments, which means the coin is extremely common in circulated grades today and remains easy to find in collections, coin jars, and old bankrolls. Historically, the coin circulated during a period of economic adjustment in Canada marked by rising interest rates earlier in the decade, technological modernization, and gradual changes in how money was produced and used, with the penny increasingly seen as more symbolic than practical, even as it continued to serve an important accounting role. From a numismatic standpoint, the 1984 cent holds modest value in worn condition, but it gains greater interest in uncirculated and mint-state examples, particularly those retaining original red, RD surfaces without heavy spotting or fingerprints, as copper coins from this era are prone to discoloration, and collectors also watch for minor mint errors such as die cracks, off-center strikes, and weakly struck letters, which can add specialized appeal. Culturally, the coin reflects the entrenched presence of Queen Elizabeth II on Canadian coinage, reinforcing a sense of continuity across generations, while the persistent maple leaf design underscores Canada's distinct national identity. Today, although the 1 cent coin has been discontinued and withdrawn from circulation, the 1984 Canadian 1 cent survives as a familiar and tangible reminder of everyday life in Canada, illustrating how even a very common coin can carry historical meaning as a witness to changing economic realities, evolving monetary policy, and the enduring symbols of the Canadian nation under the reign of. Next, top 4. The Canadian 1 cent coin dated 1994 featuring Queen Elizabeth II represents the final decade of active circulation for Canada's penny and stands as a clear example of how traditional coin designs were maintained even as the country moved toward modernized currency systems and eventually the elimination of the denomination. And while the coin is common, it holds historical and cultural value because it reflects Canada in the mid-1990s, a period shaped by economic restructuring, technological change, and evolving attitudes towards small-value coinage. The obverse of the 1994 cent shows a right-facing portrait of Queen Elizabeth II designed by Dora de Pedri Hunt, introduced in 1990 to mark a more mature stage of the Queen's reign, portraying her with greater realism, wearing a royal diadem rather than the earlier laurel wreath, and conveying dignity, experience and continuity. With the surrounding Latin inscription Elizabeth II D.G. Regina, meaning Elizabeth II, by the grace of God Queen, reaffirming Canada's constitutional monarchy. The reverse continues the long-standing maple leaves on a twig design by George Edward Kruger Gray, unchanged in concept since 1937 and deeply embedded in Canadian identity, symbolizing unity, nature, and national pride, with the denomination 1 cent and the date 1994 clearly placed. Compositionally, the 1994 cent marks an important transition because it is made of copper-plated steel, introduced in the early 1990s to reduce production costs, replacing the earlier nearly pure copper-bronze composition, resulting in a coin that appears copper-colored but is magnetic and significantly cheaper to produce, with a weight of approximately 2.25 grams, a diameter of 19.05 millimeters, and a plain edge, maintaining familiar size while modernizing materials. The Royal Canadian Mint struck hundreds of millions of cents in 1994, reflecting both heavy circulation demand and the mint's efficiency in mass production during this period, which makes the coin extremely common in circulated condition and still easily found in collections, bulk lots, and family coin jars. Historically, the coin circulated during a time when